Well, hello again and welcome back all my vintage dirt bike loving YouTube subscribers, and thanks once more for giving up your valuable time to tune in to my classic dirt bike TV channel. Now in this next featured video we are going to look at another iconic British motocross classic, so please stay with me for the next few minutes as we take a browse at Stewart Roden's brand new 500 CCM. Now, as you've already guessed, Stewart's brand new bike is not an original CCM machine by any means, because apart from the motor and a few other original parts, this bike is basically a brand new remanufactured machine based of course on the original design laid down by the late Alan Clews in the 1970s. Now unfortunately, at the time of making the video I was unable to contact Stewart to gain more information with regards to the actual build of this bike, and some of the details are unfortunately unknown to me personally, but it's good enough that we can all just take a look at this superb bike and appreciate the engineering that went in to putting it all together. Now, if you know some of the history of these CCM machines, you will already know that original examples of these bikes are becoming almost impossible to find these days, and to find an unblemished example from the 1970s is rarer than a politician's promise. Although thankfully for us in this modern time, there are a few manufacturers out there who are now producing replica frames, plastics, fuel tanks and just about every other part you need to build a machine such as this beauty from Stewart. Although complete engines and motor parts are maybe not so easy to come by. Now, Stewart's motor in his new machine is the iconic BSA B50 MX motor. Now, there were not a lot of these BSA B50 engines produced. I think BSA only manufactured about 5,000 of them during their lifetime, so you can see why they are highly sought after and how extremely rare they are to find. And owners who do have these engines in their possession tend to keep a tight hold of them, because a good original motor that hasn't been abused is worth a good chunk of money. Now, with this being a Stewart Roden built motor, you can almost guarantee that this engine's internals have some very nice modifications, as previous CCMs built by Stewart also have these special parts, and these upgrades make the standard BSA B50 motor into a very quick motorcycle indeed. Now, many riders have been known to run these engines on methanol rather than regular gas, because the methanol increases the compression and prevents the motor detonating, or pinking as we call it, and of course it also makes the engine run cooler, although it also makes the motor very fiery and sometimes quite hard to handle. Now, I can see that Stewart's CCM has an original old magnesium CCM front brake hub. Now, these parts are ultra rare, and it's very unusual to find these original CCM hubs for these bikes, but it just goes to show that there are still original bits and pieces for these Clews bikes still out there. And in this particular case, Stewart has had his brake hubs both front and rear, and these wheels looks like they've been powder coated in this very nice gold colour. Now, without doubt, these rear piggyback Olin shocks are about as good as they come in terms of their quality and ability to do their job. Now, Stewart has opted for the very best suspension system you can get by fitting these Olin's piggyback classic shocks. Now, of course, as you would expect, these are not cheap, but then again, in this world, you get what you pay for if you want outright quality. Now, the frame is most certainly a reproduction chassis, as these are now being manufactured under license from CCM by Joe Maxwell Engineering, who is also another good source if you're looking for spare parts to repair or rebuild your aging CCM. Now, the rear hub on Stewart's bike once again has been given the gold coloured powder coating treatment. Now, these wheels of course would have been rebuilt using these very high quality, high tensile, heavy duty stainless steel spokes. Now, I'm almost 100% sure that this lovely embroidered CCM seat cover is almost certainly made by a company called Transcal. Now, Stewart has similar covers to this fitted on his other CCM machines, which again are the very highest quality and certainly add a bit of comfort and style to what is already a gorgeous looking British made CCM machine. Now, whether Transcal produce these seat covers commercially, I'm not entirely sure, but this could be just a one-off seat cover made specifically for Stewart's bike. Now, this black painted alloy fuel tank is another part that's most definitely come from Stewart's stash of old CCM spares, as Stewart used to race these bikes back in the day and was a good friend of the late Alan Clews, and throughout his racing years, Stewart still has a good collection of these old CCM parts, which he continues to utilise building these superb machines. Now, more period correct parts on Stewart's bike with this nice gasser and these Magura levers and their covers. Now, these CCM B50 motors of course had no sump to hold the engine oil. Alan Clews had the foresight to store the motor's oil in the down tubes of the frame, and you can just see the oil filler just ahead of the petrol tank fuel cap here. You just unscrew the little filler and fill the frame with oil and you're good to go. Now, naturally this was a great idea and it worked very well, although regular oil changes and filter washes were a must to stop foreign bodies entering the vital arteries of the motor. Now, the history of CCM, or Clews competition machines, has been well documented and is readily available to read on the internet, but it's thanks to the late Alan Clews who started the CCM name in the early 1970s when he bought all the remaining BSA parts from the then defunct BSA competition department. Now, Alan Clews began by building bikes in his garage, and because he was refused access to the BSA works motors, he went ahead anyway and made his own improvements and upgrades to this standard B50 500 motor. Although in our particular case it seems that Stewart is missing his gear shifter on his particular engine. Now, of course, Alan Clews' first ever motorcycles were never called CCMs because At this point, Alan Clews' first motorcycles were called Clews Strokers, and it was actually sometime later that Alan would register the name Clews Competition Machines and use the CCM abbreviation on all of his future bikes. But there's certainly something about these old CCMs that look just absolutely right when you look at them from any angle. Now, one of the other good things about these 500 CCMs was there was no silencer on the exhaust, just a big bore straight through pipe that helped the 4-stroke motor breathe to its limits. But of course your environmentalists would have a heart attack when you fired up one of these CCMs, although again in noise pollution terms it was just music to a motorcyclist's ears. Now, it could be quite hard to put a particular year of manufacture on Stewart's bike because although the bike is loosely based on a CCM from the 1970s, it is still essentially a remanufactured bike for 2020. So essentially it's a new build on an old design. And so there you have it, not a fully blown original bike, but still a little beauty just the same. So I hope you've enjoyed this brief look around Stewart's stunning CCM. Now, apologies for not supplying more details on the build, but nevertheless I think it's more important that we look at the overall condition of the bike rather than the intimate details, which would of course make for a much longer video. So thanks again for taking the time to watch my content, and don't forget, if you'd like to see more of these old classics, then simply subscribe to see more of the same. So until my next posting, be safe and ride safe on your old classic crossers until we speak once again right here on Classic Dirt Bike TV. This video was brought to you in association with WorldSport, the world's #1 supplier for all your off-road and leisure sportswear. Just visit their online website for more information.